Thank you. Hey, what a treat to be here. I may be the biggest nerd around, but I've been excited about this conference, and even more excited to see all of you here. What potential we have in this room. So thank you, all of you, for being here. I want to thank several folks, particularly President Flanagan. Thanks for letting us have your facility here. We appreciate the location and to be able to bring everyone together. Thanks to Crystal Saint and Lynn Hafely. Where are they? Anyway, there's Lynn. And Crystal's still working in the back of the room, waving while she's working. These two really put everything together, and many thanks to you guys for all that you have done. Let's see. Thanks to Lumina, Complete College America, College Productivity, and Microsoft, all of whom have sponsored this. So many thanks to help get us all together here. We appreciate that. And Harry Berman, Karen Hunter Anderson, Eric Zarnikow, who all of you know in one way or another for being the lead agencies and getting all of us together. But mostly thank you to all of you here. Thanks to those who are presenting, sharing what's working on your campuses, and thanks for those of you who are here ready to come and grab some good ideas. I think what you will find here is a broad national focus on the priorities and the perspective of the nation, and then specific ways that you can get that job done in terms of affordability, in terms of completion from folks in the state of Illinois. And this is key because Jamie is a wonderful guy, but he's not going to be here next week, right? Unless we're really lucky. But those of you who are making these presentations from Illinois, there's a great burden on you. We're expecting you to be available to your colleagues in the room here as they work on scaling up and moving out and establishing your good ideas in other campuses across the state. And the value of being able to go to those folks who have been getting it done, I think, is tremendous. So I appreciate all of you for being here and being ready to do that. You know, I know as a former professor that we devote lots of time to making sure our students get it, right? And the thrill of finding that wonderful analogy that gets the final student to understand, and I might have mentioned this before to some of you, so you have to bear with me. When teaching legal writing, one of the most central concepts is the organization of the legal writing. And so I would have students who, most of them get it right away, and then some students every semester that I reached for something that would get through to them to understand that the structure, the package and the order is really important for their audience to understand. And I tried lots of analogies. I worked with my husband's friends at John A. Logan who teach English there, got lots of great analogies, and finally one day I stumbled onto lasagna. And the fact that lasagna comes in a certain set of layers. And if you order lasagna and you get the lasagna, then you're happy. And if you get the lasagna but the noodles are here and the sauce is here and the cheese is here, then you're kind of wondering about it. And if you get the lasagna, mind you, all the exact same ingredients, but it's in the blender, then you're totally grossed out. And so finally, for this last student, he says, "Oh, okay, I get it." And I'm like, "Yes, I've got the analogy," and actually did slides on that one. So this is how much time and effort we devote to getting across to our students, to making sure that they learn. And we don't, as faculty members, devote that same amount of time to thinking, what should we be learning? Who should we be learning it from? And in particular, when it involves learning from folks who we might see as competitors, there's a barrier up in front of that learning. So I appreciate that all of you today are willing to break down those barriers. And what you will get is not just a good idea, but a good idea that you can really put to work and that's going to make a difference for your students and for our state. So having said all that, next you get to hear from Jamie Merisotis, who has national and international experience, and particularly a focus on making sure that education is available to those who are often left out of the higher education picture, which I really appreciate about his message. He's part of the Lumina Foundation, and that is their central focus. Lucky dog. So anyway, Jamie is going to be able to tell us about sort of the national perspective, his take on these issues, Now, my daughters will tell me that the Lumineers are rock stars, but in our crowd, Lumina and Jamie Merisotis is the rock star. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamie Merisotis.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor. Tough act to follow, as always. Not a surprise. I'll tell you, I'm about to deliver some very weighty, astonishingly compelling remarks, no doubt. But before I do that, I really wanted to just say a word about your Lieutenant Governor and the leadership that she's been providing here, because I'm just thrilled to be here. And, you know, I want to say over the course of the last 6 years of my tenure as president of the Lumina Foundation, I've had a lot of opportunities to travel the country and see a lot of amazing, interesting things going on. And what I've come to realize is that Illinois has a unique advocate for higher education in its Lieutenant Governor. I think that Lieutenant Governor Simon recognizes the transformative power of college-level learning. She's lived it. She understands what that's all about. And she's worked hard to unleash that power and apply it full-time here in this state. And you know, I've been looking at what's been happening here in the state. As Lieutenant Governor, she was an early and enthusiastic adopter of this 60 by 25 college attainment goal, what we call, because we like to think that we made everything up, Goal 2025 at Lumina Foundation. It's a statewide effort. She's been working tirelessly to realize that ambitious goal on behalf of the state. And I'm confident that with her leadership, we're going to be able to do it here in Illinois. President Flanagan mentioned that the Lieutenant Governor's visited all 48 community colleges in each of the state's 12 public university campuses. She's written extensively about college completion and college affordability. In fact, I would argue that your presence here today, this very conference, resulted from the efforts that the Lieutenant Governor made and has made in her determination to share the best practices that she's seen at your campuses with an eye towards scaling up those to accelerate student success. In short, I think Sheila Simon has tackled the challenge of increasing college attainment with great energy and urgency, which is how it has to be tackled. And that's why we at Lumina Foundation are so proud to be supporting this conference and pleased to have all of you as our partners in this work. So, why the urgency? Why is this work so important? Why do we have to explore and embrace new approaches to serving students here in Illinois and indeed throughout the nation? I think the simple answer to those questions is this. The traditional approaches aren't working well enough or frankly fast enough. Business as usual just isn't sufficient, not in this time of sweeping and significant change that we're all living in. And if there was ever a time of change in American higher education, that time is clearly now. So many forces are at work to compel these changes, and as higher education leaders, I recognize that you are all dealing with all of them, but let me mention just a few in particular. The first, of course, is the funding challenge. Even though Illinois, like most states, has slowly emerged from the dark depths of a few years ago, I doubt that anyone in this room here believes that we'll ever get back to the good old days. Like it or not, the pressure to do more with what we have is clearly here to stay. And frankly, despite the challenges that it creates, that results-oriented mentality isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it creates the perfect opportunity to challenge the status quo of higher education funding in ways that we could probably not have even imagined just as recently as 4 or 5 years ago. To increase college attainment in the state and at the levels that we really need, we're challenged to restructure our thinking about ways in which we're going to fund this higher ed enterprise. Now, another obvious change in the higher ed landscape is the rapid rise of technology. Big data, online programs, the explosion of social media. These and many other 21st century higher education trends are transforming pedagogy and forcing huge changes in nearly every corner of the higher ed enterprise, from assessment and accreditation to student recruitment and support to faculty hiring and development. Perhaps even more obvious, the college students themselves are changing. Today's student population is huge and it's growing. And I think those numbers need to grow even larger in coming years if we're going to keep our economic edge and ensure our social cohesion as a society. In addition to its sheer size, today's student population is also remarkably diverse. In fact, it looks nothing like your father's freshman class or even my own freshman class 30 years ago. The 21st century students, those students represent all ages and income groups, all races and ethnicities. Students pursuing not just four-year degrees, but also adding skills and credentials of all kinds to their portfolios at many different levels of higher education. The students that you must serve may live on campus or way off campus. They might be attending part-time or full-time, and for the majority of them, they're likely to enroll in two or more institutions before they actually get their first credential. Now, today's students also face a variety of challenges that I think few members of our college classes probably had to confront. Most are really struggling to pay for college. Many are incurring significant debt. A growing number are pursuing college and career, fitting classwork around the demands of their employers. Many are juggling family responsibilities. In short, the student population has grown much larger and infinitely more diverse, and that growth is a part of what's transforming higher education. But the last change I want to mention may, in fact, be the most profound. In a word, I think the expectations have changed at every level and from nearly every quarter. Employers expect better graduates. They want degree and certificate holders who are truly prepared for the demands and the complexities of the modern workplace. State leaders and policymakers expect better results. They want institutions to produce more and better graduates at a reasonable cost. In other words, they expect a better return on the investment of public funds. Students and families expect a more responsive higher education system. They want high-quality programs delivered in a variety of modes and platforms at prices that don't force them to mortgage their own futures. These new expectations present the higher education system with a lot of challenges, to be sure. But I don't think that those expectations are unreasonable. In fact, a few months ago, we at Lumina commissioned a Gallup poll that demonstrates just how reasonable the public really is on the issues of college affordability and value. Now, the results of this poll are public, and you can examine them in detail on Gallup's or Lumina's website. Today, I just wanted to share a couple of highlights from that survey. I think two findings that speak to the public's general view of higher education. First, turns out people are actually willing to pay for higher education. 1 in 4 respondents, 26%, said that they'd expect to pay between $10,000 and $20,000 for each year of undergraduate study. And another 18% said that $5,000 to $10,000 would be a fair price. Now, lower income populations, not surprisingly, suggested somewhat lower tuition levels were unaffordable. I think this underscores the notion that we need to concentrate resources on those who actually need them the most. But second, people want a good return on their investment. 41% cited the ability to get a good job as the most important factor, not the only factor, but the most important factor when choosing a college or university. More important than an institution's cost, or, interestingly, for those of you who are feeling this pressure, more important than its graduation rate. Taken together, these bits of data make an important point, I think, about the heightened expectations I've been talking about, and about the tide of change that I think is sweeping throughout the higher education system. Put simply, the big message is this: the expectations are valid and they're clear. Families want higher education to be responsive, to be affordable, and to be workforce relevant. Changes in the system are needed because our future depends on our ability to affect those changes. The facts, I think, are inescapable. If this nation is to thrive in the global economy and to continue to progress as a society, far more of our citizens need to be properly educated. This can't be a surprise to anyone in this room here today. All of you know very well that a proper education no longer ends with a high school diploma. It just can't. To attain and maintain a place in the middle class and to produce all of those economic and societal and cultural benefits that such a position affords, Americans need the skills and knowledge that can only be gained in high-quality post-secondary programs. In a word, college is key for Illinois residents, and I would argue for all Americans. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time today in an audience like this repeating the wealth of evidence that underscores the importance of the college completion agenda. You understand the social and the economic imperatives for increasing attainment, particularly among those students who, at least in the past, we used to refer to as non-traditional. That is, those low-income, first-generation students of color and working adults, because, in fact, those are the students that you're now serving today. You know that non-traditional is now the norm, and that we must better serve these 21st century students, both to enhance social equity and to ensure economic progress. The simple fact is, we can't properly serve today's students, and certainly not the students of tomorrow, without fundamental change. Now, if you've heard anything from Lumina Foundation recently, you've heard that that's been our fundamental message, that the higher education system must be redesigned so that it truly serves our needs as a society. This redesign effort is a major undertaking, of course, one that goes far beyond Lumina and any other organization and will take years to accomplish. Still, even though this work is just beginning, system redesign has already become a central focus because we know that it's critical to achieving that 60% goal. Now, clearly, we're not going to reach that goal by any well-worn path. Each of you is here today because I think you recognize that. We need new routes, new ideas, new approaches to serve much larger numbers of students. The Illinois Board of Higher Education's Faculty Advisory Council chair had it right when he said last week, quote, "We need to make sure higher education does not become an opportunity only for the elite and wealthy families." In particular, we need to concentrate on those 21st century students I mentioned earlier, those students who, for decades, have been on the wrong side of the growing attainment gap in higher education, those low-income, first-generation racial and ethnic minorities and working adults that I mentioned earlier. To close those gaps and to meet the full range of societal needs, we need an integrated, fully linked higher education system, one that develops our human capital at all levels. Again, we need a redesigned system, one that's flexible, that's affordable, and that's relentlessly focused on quality. At Lumina, we're working actively to design a truly student-centered system, one that ensures access to all types of students, gives those students the preparation and ongoing support that they need in order to succeed, and enables them to earn credentials that demonstrate real and relevant learning. Today, I'm looking forward in a little while after this session to engaging students here at Illinois State University during a roundtable discussion. We learned so much from their experiences and their aspirations, and I'm looking forward to increasing my knowledge and certainly my commitment to this work as a result of those conversations. So how will this redesigned system actually work? Obviously, there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and it frankly hasn't emerged in a lot of detail as of yet. Still, I think we can begin to describe it, and we can listen to students and others who can help us to define it as it moves forward. We know the basic aspects of what the nation needs. First of all, at its core, that system must offer multiple, clearly marked pathways to various levels of student success. Pathways that are affordable, that are clear and interconnected, that don't have dead ends or cul-de-sacs, and that have plenty of on and off ramps. Second, it's important to understand that these pathways must be built on the foundation of learning. Degrees and other post-secondary credentials must represent well-defined and transparent learning outcomes. And all learning should count, no matter how, when, or where it was obtained. In the best scenario, I think, this new system will be one in which every student knows where she or he is going, knows how much it will cost to get there, knows how much time it will take, and knows what to expect at journey's end, both in terms of learning outcomes and in terms of their career prospects. Now, we don't have the luxury of commissioning long studies on how to make this system a reality, and we know that change is never easy. Still, I think the payoffs for making this change will be huge, so let's explore how it can happen. Let's look at two major shifts in thinking that undergird this system redesign effort, a pair of new perspectives that I think have to drive all of those smaller changes that are going to lead up to the scale that we're talking about here today and tomorrow. For many decades, if not from the very beginning, our higher education system has been organized around institutions and measured by time. But another way, institutions have been the focal point of that system, and time, at least defined by the credit hour, has been the lens through which we've viewed it. These long-held perspectives, frankly, simply won't be enough to educate many more Americans. They need to shift. Now, let me be clear. This does not mean that Merisotis from Lumina Foundation is saying institutions are unimportant. Institutions are very important. In fact, the knowledge development role the colleges and universities play is critical, as is the broader role of service to community and society that's been such an important part of what higher education is and does. But the institutional focus, in my view, the idea that the decisions and the funding and the policies should primarily respond to what the colleges and universities say are the needs, that idea, I think, is no longer going to be relevant or appropriate. It must be replaced by a focus on meeting the needs of students and, by extension, the needs of society. Just as important, we think that that time-based method of keeping score in higher education has to be replaced. Again, it must be replaced by a system that defines, fosters, measures, and rewards what truly matters, the student learning. Now, I don't think we can overstate this point about the redesigned higher education system. We have to focus on those outcomes, those learning-based outcomes, as the truest measures of educational quality. Not time, not institutional reputation, but genuine learning. That is, competencies informed by the real world in which these students must thrive. This shift to a student-centered, learning-based system is the key. It's the foundation for the overarching, fully linked system of education that will run from pre-K through higher education into the workforce and even beyond. Once that shift is made, it becomes possible to take other vital steps. For example, we can align assessments and certifications at various levels of education to prevent duplication and improve timely completion of programs. We can create and refine financial aid programs and funding models that incentivize those actual outcomes, paying students and institutions for what's actually learned. We can clearly define career ladders and pathways for students to follow. And I know many of you are working hard on your pathway programs here in this state. We can assure employers that graduates will have the knowledge and skills that they truly need to succeed in the modern workplace and to better understand from employers what they're looking for. Now, of course, from all of your perspectives in higher education, this fully linked system extends beyond what you might typically consider your immediate area of responsibility. In fact, it extends in two directions: back into the K-12 system and forward into the workplace. And that's another vital challenge, I think, in terms of what we need to face and how our perspective needs to change. In an education system that's truly student-centered, your area of responsibility can't begin in year 13 and end after graduate school. Rather, you and other higher education leaders must share responsibility all along the pipeline with educators at every level for the success of each student. Okay, I get it. This sounds like a monumental task. I understand, and I won't deny that there are major challenges involved. I mean, look, all we're looking for is a redesigned system that can accommodate the lives and learning styles of every student, ensure consistent quality, and operate at a scale large enough to serve millions more students every year, all at a reasonable, perhaps even reduced cost. Okay, got it. Very tough work, fully understand. But the point is, this isn't impossible. In fact, that's why we're here today. There are efforts underway right now, here in this state, that prove that that's not impossible. And I think the agenda for this meeting is replete with lots of relevant examples from institutions all over this state. And I want to mention a few of those examples to point out that the art of the possible is already upon us. Take a look, for example, at the model to reduce credit creep, or the unnecessary credit students take to attain a degree that's being done, the work that's being done at SIU. Take a look at the plan to better increase internship opportunities and to prepare students to join the workforce and connect with future employers that's being done at ISU. Take a look at the pilot projects to streamline course credit transfers from one school to another, or the initiatives aimed at quickly identifying when students may be heading off their graduation course. Take a look at some of the leaders who are here today and some of the things that they'll be talking about at this conference. For example, the guided pathways programs that officials from SIU and Kankakee Community College are going to be talking about. Take a look at the new approaches to developmental ed that experts from the city colleges and UIC are going to be discussing. Take a look at the student support and student-centeredness issues that will be discussed by teams from SIU Edwardsville and from Moraine Valley Community College. Every one of these examples, and a lot more that I just don't have the time to list here, these are pieces of post-secondary education's newly emerging post-secondary puzzle. These programs and similar efforts underway all across the nation exemplify that spirit of innovation and the sense of urgency that's driving higher education's redesign project. Right now, admittedly, these efforts are comparatively small, and in many cases, they're disconnected. As vital and promising as they may be, they won't reach their full potential until they grow sufficiently large and effective to somehow merge into that fully linked, student-centered system. That is, until they actually scale up. And that, my friends, is why we're here today, to explore the ways by which this scaling can actually occur. Again, Lumina is proud to be a sponsor of this conference, and I'm personally grateful for the opportunity to help set the stage. And in a moment, I'll be glad to take any questions you might have about our approach. But let me close by saying we really appreciate your participation in what I'm sure is going to be a very enlightening couple of days. I want to encourage you to leave here with at least one specific action item, something that will work well on your campus and assist you in meeting the goal of educating more of the students you serve better. We in education certainly enjoy meetings, conferences, and convenings like everybody else, but in my view, it's the commitment to innovate and the focus on student-centeredness implementation. That's when real change occurs, and that's what this conference is all about. That action, that relentless focus, can make this two-day conversation something truly significant. It could turn out to be two very important days for this state, for the institutions you represent, and ultimately for the students you serve and the society that those students will inherit. Thank you very much. I think I've got time for a few questions, if that's okay. Are we okay with that? If people want to throw tomatoes at me or ask questions, make comments, I'd love to hear from you. It's a higher ed audience. Come on. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
If you travel across the country and look at practices across the country, where do you see that Illinois maybe on the leading edge of things, and where are we lagging?
Yeah, so there's, Illinois is, Lieutenant Governor and I were talking about this, somewhere in the middle right now, partly because Illinois has an average attainment rate. And so Illinois is in the middle. If you look at the national attainment levels, Illinois is around the national average. And so Illinois is obviously doing some things well, but the point is there's a long way to go to where you need to be. That 60% goal, the average is not what you should be aiming at. What you should be aiming at is what your workforce demands, what society clearly needs. That's the point. And what's interesting is to look at the states that are actually a little bit behind the Illinois of the world and see what they're doing. There's a lot of interest in focusing on, say, the Merisotis and Massachusetts because they're farther ahead. I think what's most interesting is the states that are right behind you that want to quickly surpass you and see their opportunities for economic growth and potential and the other benefits that result from that clearly in their sights. States like Tennessee, which have made some major changes in their higher education enterprise in the last 5 years. Everything from performance-based funding to a greater focus on student learning outcomes to a variety of other things that I think are really interesting. The institutions have been highly engaged in that work. This has not been, in a state like Tennessee, something where the policymakers have imposed and the institutions have begrudgingly delivered. This has actually been a collaborative effort where, in fact, change is happening, and although it's early in the process, I think there's some encouraging signs of the kinds of change that they think is possible in a state like Tennessee. There are some other states where we're seeing, I can't help but mention Indiana because that's where I'm from, Indiana has some really interesting things going on in terms of credit transfer and trying to bring down some of the barriers that students face in order to be able to help them get through the system faster. We got a very interesting thing going on at Ivy Tech Community College right now with an accelerated associate degree program. Some of you may have heard of this. There's some other efforts going on in the CUNY system and some others. So Ivy Tech has an accelerated associate program in 4 different areas where you can get your associate degree in 11 months. And the associate degree, the premise of the associate degree is that it's block scheduled, and in the model that we've developed locally, we're actually bringing it statewide next year, bringing it to all of the state's community colleges. And the model has been put in place. The students are actually paid a stipend to reduce their need for work so that they can actually focus on getting their education. It's a very interesting model. The way I've tried to put it as simply as possible to people is the proposition that we've made to the students is we're going to give you a job. Your job is to get an education in 1 year. And you got to stay focused on that job because on the back end, you're going to get another job that's actually going to pay you pretty well and it's going to help you get on the path in life. And the success rates in that program are very high. We're talking about completion rates in the community college sector over 80% in a 1-year time period. So very interesting things going on that I think Illinois can learn from as it tries to move quickly from the middle of the pack to getting to a much higher level, which clearly needs to take place. It's why the 60 by 25 goal is so important. Yes?
You talk about the expectations of us have changed. In your travels, have you noticed a change in expectations of students, of parents?
Yeah. I think this is a critical issue, and this is a shared responsibility. My view is that students and parents are concerned about affordability. The Gallup data that I mentioned focus on the fact that they're highly focused on the job outcomes in a way that in some historic ways they never were before. But it's not clear to me that we've increased our expectations of students and their families in terms of their responsibilities, and I think we should. I think the responsibility for student learning is as much on the student as it is on us to help drive them towards those student learning outcomes. And I think it's a very important point. And one of the issues that we have to confront here is that we have to get the majority of people, 60%, across that finish line and to a post-secondary credential. Some proportion of people aren't going to make it despite our best efforts. We've got to figure out what we're going to do for them, but we've got to create as much encouragement as possible for them to stick with it so that they get their rewards individually and we get the collective rewards as a society. And part of that has to do with raising the bar in terms of our expectations on them. It's a good point. And it's something that we aren't seeing as much of as we need to. Yes, sir.
As you talk about raising the bar, we see the proliferation of online instruction, online degrees, and yet the quality controls I don't think are there, and also of the proprietary schools and their resistance to the kind of accountability measures that the Department of Education is trying to put into place to protect consumers. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, the higher expectations, my view, maybe not an unpopular view in this audience, but my view is that the expectations should be raised on everyone who's delivering higher education. And so, look, we need online learning. We need the for-profits. We need new types of entities emerging. You know, we need these sort of distributed models where people can access high-quality learning and be able to aggregate it so that they can get a degree or other credential from lots of different places. But I share your view that the bar has not been placed at the right level to ensure that we focus on a high-quality learning for students in some of those contexts, but I would argue that the bar has got to be raised across the board here. I mean, if you look at lots and lots of indicators, whether it's the student learning outcomes data that we have from national studies, the completion rates, the other efforts, I think we all bear a responsibility. And what I'm concerned about here is that we're going to focus on the challenges of online learning, or, you know, I was writing about the dangers of the for-profit industry in the 1980s. It's been a long time coming. But the truth is, we need as many points of delivery as possible in order to serve the vastly increased number of students who need to be served, because we have a capacity problem in higher education in this country. The gap between what we're producing now and what we need to produce is pretty significant. Fundamentally, it comes back to my point that I was talking about, which is that those regulatory mechanisms have to be premised on a pretty simple idea, which is that our expectations for high-quality learning should be at the root of what we do in the enterprise for everyone that's producing higher education. What does a degree mean? What does it actually mean? How can we be sure that students are getting high-quality learning and that their degree represents real and relevant learning that's applicable in the labor force, that contributes to our collective well-being in terms of our democracy? That's not the conversation that we've had in higher education until fairly recently. I think we are making progress on that conversation now. Lots of good work going on in student learning outcomes that I'm very encouraged by, but that's got to apply to all of us, not just to certain segments or sectors of the system. Other comments or questions? You know, my final point is I really appreciate the leadership of everyone here. You're here because you're doing something really important, but you're also here because you want to do even more. And that's what it takes to get to this point of scaling up. What it takes is not these 1,000 examples of excellence, but how those examples of excellence actually roll up into meaningful change. That's what we need, and I'm very grateful for your leadership. So thank you very much.